Anya Petrova wasn't your typical code monkey hunched over a dimly lit screen. She was a digital artist, a cybernetic Picasso, painting masterpieces in binary code. Her world was a kaleidoscope of neon lights reflecting off chrome surfaces, a symphony of clicks and whirs from overclocked processors. Fashion was her armor, a constantly evolving statement of defiance against the drab conformity of the corporate world she so readily exploited. One day, a vintage Vivienne Westwood dress might be paired with custom-built, light-up platform boots. The next, she'd be rocking a cyberpunk kimono over ripped fishnets, her hair a gravity-defying explosion of electric blue. Anya's income wasn't derived from some mundane tech support gig. She danced on the razor's edge of legality, a gray-hat hacker who skirted the law with the grace of a seasoned ballerina. She specialized in penetration testing, finding vulnerabilities in corporate networks, sometimes alerting the companies, for a hefty fee, sometimes not. This allowed her to maintain her lavish lifestyle, which included a penthouse apartment overlooking the city, filled with vintage arcade games and walls plastered with Banksy prints. Her moral compass, let's just say, was calibrated differently. She justified her actions by viewing herself as a digital Robin Hood, redistributing wealth from the megacorporations to herself. It was a convenient rationalization, but one she clung to fiercely. She rarely considered the potential victims of her activities, the small businesses or individuals who might suffer collateral damage. It was all just data, lines of code, devoid of human consequence, or so she told herself. One rainy Tuesday evening, while bored and fueled by copious amounts of espresso, Anya decided to probe a seemingly insignificant corporate server. It belonged to Omnicorp, a monolithic conglomerate involved in everything from pharmaceuticals to defense contracts. It was a challenge, a digital Everest to conquer. She wasn't expecting to find anything particularly interesting, perhaps some poorly secured employee data or a few trade secrets she could sell on the dark web. But then, she found it, a heavily encrypted file, buried deep within the server's core, its very existence screaming danger. It was unlike anything she'd ever seen, protected by layers of encryption so complex they seemed almost impenetrable. Most hackers would have given up, chalking it up to a lost cause. But Anya wasn't most hackers. The challenge was irresistible, a siren song luring her into the digital abyss. She had to know what was inside. The thrill of the hunt, the intellectual puzzle, the potential payday, it was all too tempting to resist. And so, she began to crack it. The initial hours were a blur of focused intensity. Anya's fingers danced across the keyboard, a caffeinated ballet of keystrokes and mouse clicks. Lines of code scrolled across her multiple monitors, a chaotic symphony of letters, numbers, and symbols. She employed every tool in her arsenal. Brute force attacks, dictionary attacks, rainbow tables, and sophisticated algorithms she'd personally developed. Each layer of encryption she peeled back felt like a small victory, a surge of adrenaline that fueled her determination. Sleep became a luxury she couldn't afford. Empty coffee cups piled up on her desk, alongside half-eaten takeout containers. The neon lights of the city outside blurred into streaks of color as dawn approached, unnoticed by Anya, lost in the digital labyrinth. She was fueled by a cocktail of caffeine, adrenaline, and sheer intellectual curiosity. She had to know what secrets Omnicorp was so desperately trying to protect. Days blurred into nights, the relentless rhythm of her hacking filling the penthouse with an almost hypnotic energy. She hit roadblocks, moments where the encryption seemed unbreakable, where she doubted her abilities. But Anya was nothing if not persistent. She'd step away, take a quick shower, maybe blast some deafening EDM to clear her head, then return to the problem with renewed vigor. She scoured online forums, traded tips with other hackers, carefully concealing her target, of course, and devoured every article she could find on advanced encryption techniques. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, a breakthrough. She bypassed the final layer of encryption. A complex algorithm that had stumped her for days. A wave of exhaustion washed over her, but it was quickly replaced by a surge of exhilaration. She had done it. She had cracked the uncrackable. The file opened, revealing its contents. It wasn't what she expected. She had anticipated trade secrets, financial records, perhaps even evidence of corporate espionage. But what she found was far more disturbing. It was a series of documents, images, and video files that painted a chilling picture of a vast conspiracy. The files detailed illicit activities, covert operations, and the manipulation of global events. They implicated powerful figures in government, finance, and the military-industrial complex. Anya felt a cold dread creep into her bones. This wasn't just corporate malfeasance. This was something far more sinister. This was a truth that someone, somewhere, wanted desperately to keep hidden. She knew, instinctively, that she had stumbled onto something incredibly dangerous. And then, a new file popped up. A list of names. At the top was hers. The appearance of her name on that list was a digital slap in the face, a stark and terrifying realization that she was no longer just a casual observer. She was a target. The hunters were now the hunted. Anya immediately severed her connection to the Omnicorp server, wiping her tracks as best she could, but she knew it was likely too late. They knew she had the file. They knew she knew. Panic began to set in. A cold sweat slicking her skin. She frantically backed up the decrypted files onto multiple hard drives, scattering them throughout her apartment, hidden inside vintage arcade games, behind Banksy prints, anywhere they might be overlooked. She knew she couldn't trust cloud storage. It was too easily compromised. Physical backups were her only hope. As she worked, her mind raced. Who were these people? What exactly was this conspiracy about? The files were fragmented, incomplete, leaving her with more questions than answers. But one thing was clear. This was bigger than anything she had ever encountered. This was a game played on a global scale, with stakes that were far beyond her comprehension. Suddenly, the lights flickered and died, plunging her penthouse into darkness. The hum of her computer ceased, replaced by an unsettling silence. Anya froze, her heart pounding in her chest. At a power outage? Unlikely. This felt deliberate, targeted. She grabbed a heavy wrench from her toolbox, her only weapon, and moved cautiously through the apartment. Her senses on high alert. The silence was broken by a deafening crash as the front door splintered inwards. A group of figures, clad in black tactical gear, stormed into the apartment. Their faces hidden behind masks. They moved with a practiced efficiency, sweeping through the rooms, their weapons drawn. Anya knew, in that instant, that her life had irrevocably changed. She didn't hesitate. She threw the wrench, hitting one of the intruders square in the face. That he stumbled back, momentarily stunned. It bought her a few precious seconds. She sprinted towards the fire escape, adrenaline coursing through her veins. She scrambled down the metal ladder, her bare feet slipping on the wet rungs behind her. She could hear the shouts of her pursuers, their heavy footsteps echoing in the night. They were gaining on her. Anya knew she couldn't outrun them. She had to find somewhere to hide, somewhere to disappear. She reached the ground and darted into the crowded streets, hoping to lose herself in the anonymity of the city. The hunt had begun. Anya navigated the labyrinthine streets, her heart pounding in sync with the city's pulse. The rain slicked the pavement, reflecting the neon signs in distorted patterns, mirroring her own fractured reality. She ducked into a crowded nightclub, the thumping bass and flashing lights providing a temporary shield. She needed to think, to assess her options. She found a secluded corner, ordered a strong drink, and tried to piece together what she knew. The files she had managed to copy were fragmented, but the overarching theme was clear: a coordinated effort to manipulate global events for profit and power. The conspiracy reached the highest echelons of society, implicating politicians, CEOs, and military leaders. But the puppet masters, the ones pulling the strings, remained shrouded in mystery. The files referred to them only as the Syndicate. Anya had heard whispers of the Syndicate in the darker corners of the internet, a shadowy organization rumored to be involved in everything from arms trafficking to political assassinations. They were the stuff of urban legends, a boogeyman used to scare hackers into silence. But now, they were very real, and they were after her. She knew she couldn't go to the police. The Syndicate's influence likely extended into law enforcement, making her vulnerable to betrayal. She couldn't trust anyone. She was alone, hunted, and in possession of information that could shatter the foundations of the world order. As she sat there, nursing her drink, she noticed a figure watching her from across the room. He was tall, muscular, with a shaved head and piercing blue eyes. He wore a tailored suit that somehow managed to look both elegant and intimidating. He exuded an aura of quiet confidence, a sense of controlled power that made Anya uneasy. He started to walk towards her, his gaze unwavering. That Anya's instincts screamed danger. She knew, without a doubt, that he was one of them. She stood up, ready to run. But then he spoke, his voice a low, gravelly rumble. "Anya Petrova?" he asked. "I'm here to help you." He flashed a card that IT was a picture of herself hacking, and underneath, some contact information. IT said one word, Deckard. Anya's initial reaction was disbelief. Deckard looked like a predator, not a protector. But the card, the image of her hacking, was undeniable proof that he knew who she was and what she had done. And his timing was impeccable, too convenient to be a coincidence. Yet what choice did she have? "Who sent you?" Anya asked, her voice barely a whisper above the club's thumping music. "That's not important right now," Deckard replied, his eyes scanning the crowd. "What is important is getting you out of here. They know you're here. We need to move." Now, before Anya could protest, Deckard grabbed her arm and pulled her through the crowd. He moved with a purpose. His movements precise and efficient, weaving through the throng of dancing bodies like a shark through a school of fish. Anya struggled to keep up, her designer heels sinking into the sticky floor as they reached the exit. Anya saw them point. Two men, dressed in the same black tactical gear as the ones who had raided her apartment, were standing by the door, their eyes scanning the faces of everyone leaving the club. They spotted Anya, and their expressions hardened. "Run!" Deckard yelled, shoving Anya ahead of him. He turned to face the pursuers, his body a wall of muscle and steel. Anya didn't need to be told twice. She sprinted out of the club, her heart pounding in her chest. She could hear the sounds of a scuffle behind her, the thud of fists connecting with flesh, the grunts of exertion. She didn't dare look back. She ran blindly, her only thought to escape, to survive. She weaved through the crowded streets, dodging traffic, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She didn't know where she was going, but she knew she had to keep moving. Finally, she reached a deserted alleyway, a dark and narrow passage between two buildings. She collapsed against a brick wall, her body trembling with exhaustion and fear. She waited, listening for the sounds of pursuit. After what felt like an eternity, Deckard appeared, his face bruised and bloody, but his eyes still sharp and alert. "We need to get out of the city," he said, his voice strained. "They'll be watching all the exits. I have a contact who can help us." Anya nodded, too exhausted to speak. She knew she was placing her life in the hands of a stranger, but she had no other choice. Deckard was her only hope, her last chance to expose the truth before it was deleted forever. He was now her protector. Deckard wasn't just a man of action. He was a ghost, a phantom operating in the shadows. His past was a mosaic of classified missions, covert operations, and deadly encounters, etched onto his face in the form of scars and etched into his soul in the form of regrets. He was a former Black Ops agent, a specialist in wet work and deniable operations, a man who had seen the darkest corners of the world and lived to tell the tale. Though he rarely did, he had walked away from that life years ago, disillusioned by the corruption and betrayal he had witnessed. He tried to find solace in anonymity, living a quiet existence, working as a mechanic in a small garage on the outskirts of the city. But the past has a way of catching up, and when a cryptic message arrived, offering him a substantial sum of money to protect a hacker named Anya Petrova, he knew he couldn't refuse. The money was tempting, of course, but it was more than that. Something about the message, about the situation, resonated with him. He sensed a wrong that needed righting, a truth that needed to be exposed, and perhaps, deep down, he saw a chance for redemption, a way to atone for the sins of his past. He didn't know who had hired him. The communication was encrypted, the payment anonymous. All he knew was that Anya Petrova was in danger, and he was the only one who could protect her. He had studied her profile, her online activity, her hacking skills. He knew she was brilliant, reckless, and fiercely independent. He also knew she was in way over her head as he led Anya through the back alleys of the city. He assessed her strengths and weaknesses. She was quick-witted, resourceful, and adaptable. But she was also vulnerable, exposed, and ill-prepared for the brutal Reality she was now facing that he would have to teach her to survive, to trust, and to fight. They reached a nondescript warehouse on the edge of the docks. Deckard knocked on a steel door, and a peephole slid open. A pair of suspicious eyes scrutinized them before the door creaked open, revealing a grizzled old man with a shotgun. Deckard. The man grunted, his voice rough as sandpaper. I wasn't expecting you. I need your help, Mac, Deckard said, his voice firm. We need a way out of the city. And we need it now. Mac eyed Anya with suspicion. Who's the dame? She's the reason we're here, Deckard replied. She's got something they want. And they'll kill to get it. Mac sighed. All right, come on in. But you owe me big time, Deckard. Mac's warehouse was a haven for the forgotten. A sanctuary for those who operated outside the LAW.IT was filled with the detritus of 1,000 shady deals. Crates of smuggled goods, disassembled weapons, and the lingering scent of desperation. Mac led them to a hidden room in the back. A makeshift safe house equipped with a cot, a table, and a single flickering light bulb. I've got a boat leaving for international waters in an hour, Mac said. It's your best bet for getting clear of this mess. But it'll cost you. Deckard nodded. We'll pay. Just get us on that boat. As Mac went to make the arrangements, Deckard turned to Anya. We don't have much time that I need you to tell me everything you know about that file. Anya recounted her hacking, the encrypted data, the conspiracy she had uncovered, and the list with her name on it as she spoke. Deckard's expression grew grim. He knew the syndicate, he knew their reach, their ruthlessness, and their unwavering commitment to protecting their secrets. Suddenly, the warehouse doors exploded inwards, sending splinters of wood flying through the air. A hail of gunfire erupted, shattering the silence. The syndicate had found them. We gotta move, Deckard yelled, grabbing Anya's arm and pulling her to her feet. He grabbed a pistol from a hidden compartment in the table and returned fire, providing cover as they made their way towards the back exit. But the syndicate wasn't the only threat as they reached the loading dock. They were confronted by a group of men in dark suits, their faces impassive, their eyes cold. They were government agents, their badges flashing briefly in the dim light. Freeze! Federal agents! One of them shouted. We know you have classified information. Surrender now. Anya and Deckard were caught between two opposing forces, each determined to capture them. They were on the run, hunted by both the syndicate and the government. There was no escape, no safe haven. They were alone, outnumbered, and outgunned. Deckard looked at Anya, his expression grim. This just got a whole lot more complicated. He kicked open a side door leading to the docks, and they plunged into the darkness, the sounds of gunfire echoing behind them. The chase was on. The docks were a chaotic maze of shipping containers, cranes, and shadowy figures. Deckard and Anya sprinted through the darkness, their footsteps echoing on the concrete. They dodged forklifts, scaled fences, and slipped past security guards, their pursuers hot on their heels. They managed to find a small, dilapidated speedboat, its engine sputtering to life after several attempts. Deckard steered the boat out into the open water, leaving the city lights behind them. They were free, for now as the boat sped through the waves. Anya pulled out one of her backup drives. She needed to understand the full scope of what she had uncovered. She connected the drive to a battered laptop she had managed to salvage from her apartment and began to analyze the files. What are you doing? Deckard asked, his eyes scanning the horizon. I need to know what we're dealing with, Anya replied, her fingers flying across the keyboard. I need to understand why they're so desperate to silence us. As she delved deeper into the files, she discovered something unsettling. The encrypted data wasn't just a collection of incriminating documents. It was a sophisticated program, a dead man's switch. If the files were ever exposed, either by Anya or by someone else, it would trigger the release of a massive trove of even more damaging information. Information that could bring down governments, shatter alliances, and expose the darkest secrets of the global elite. This isn't just about covering up a conspiracy, Anya said, her voice trembling. It's about controlling the narrative, that it's about preventing the truth from ever coming out. The dead man's switch was a fail-safe, a last resort to ensure that the conspiracy remained hidden. Even if the original files were compromised, IT was a powerful weapon, but it was also a dangerous one. If activated, it could unleash chaos on a global scale. "We need to be careful," Deckard said, his voice grim. "If we expose these files, we could unleash something we can't control." But Anya was determined. She knew that the truth had to be revealed, no matter the cost. She had stumbled upon a conspiracy that threatened the very foundations of society, and she couldn't stand by and let it continue. She was a hacker, a truth seeker, and she wouldn't be silenced. "They started this," Anya said, her eyes blazing with defiance. "Now we finish it." The speedboat was a temporary reprieve, a brief moment of calm before the storm. Deckard knew they couldn't stay on the water forever. They needed a plan, a strategy to outwit their pursuers and expose the truth. He steered the boat towards a remote island, a forgotten speck of land on the edge of the map. The island was a desolate place, a windswept landscape of rocky cliffs and sparse vegetation. It was uninhabited, save for a few wild animals and the remnants of an abandoned lighthouse. It was the perfect place to lay low, to regroup, and to prepare for the next phase of their mission. Deckard set up a perimeter around the lighthouse, using his skills to create a network of traps and alarms. He taught Anya basic self-defense techniques, how to handle a weapon, and how to trust her instincts. He knew she was a quick learner, but he also knew that their enemies were ruthless and relentless. While Deckard focused on their physical security, Anya worked tirelessly to decrypt the remaining files. She used her hacking skills to access secure servers, to bypass firewalls, and to gather intelligence on the syndicate and the government agents who were hunting them. She was a digital warrior, fighting a battle on a virtual front. While Deckard fought a battle on a physical one, days turned into nights. The tense rhythm of their existence punctuated by close calls and near misses. Syndicate assassins stalked them through the island's dense forests, their movements silent and deadly. Government agents used drones and surveillance technology to track their every move. Deckard and Anya were constantly on the run, one step ahead of their pursuers. They used their skills and their wits to evade capture, to outmaneuver their enemies, and to stay alive. It was a cat-and-mouse game, a deadly dance of survival. As Anya decrypted more of the files, she began to understand the true scope of the conspiracy. It wasn't just about money or power. It was about control. The syndicate wanted to control every aspect of society, from the media to the government, from the economy to the military. They wanted to create a world where they were the puppet masters, pulling the strings from behind the scenes. Anya knew that they couldn't let that happen. They had to expose the truth, to reveal the syndicate's machinations to the world. But they were running out of time. The syndicate was closing in, their grip tightening with each passing day. And the government agents were determined to silence them, to bury the truth forever. As Anya worked, Deckard often found himself staring out at the ocean, his gaze distant, his mind lost in the memories of his past. He rarely spoke about his former life, but Anya sensed that he carried a heavy burden, a secret that haunted him. One night, as they sat by a crackling fire, Anya finally broke the silence. "Why are you doing this, Deckard?" she asked. "Why are you risking your life for me?" Deckard hesitated, his eyes filled with pain. "It's complicated," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "Tell me." Anya insisted. "I deserve to know." Deckard sighed, and the story began to unfold. Years ago, he had been a top operative for a clandestine branch of the government, a specialist in black ops and deniable operations. He had carried out missions all over the world, eliminating threats, protecting national interests, and operating in the shadows. One of his missions had involved infiltrating the syndicate, gathering intelligence on their activities, and disrupting their operations. He had gone deep undercover, gaining their trust, and, rising through their ranks, he had learned their secrets, their plans, and their weaknesses. But then, everything had gone wrong. A double agent within his own organization had betrayed him, revealing his true identity to the syndicate. He had been ambushed, captured, and tortured. He had managed to escape, but not before witnessing the brutal execution of his team, his friends, his family. The syndicate had taken everything from him. His career, his reputation, his loved ones. He had spent years trying to rebuild his life, to forget the horrors he had witnessed. But he could never truly escape the past. When he received the message offering him the job to protect Anya, he knew it was a chance for redemption. He saw in her a reflection of himself, a pawn caught in a deadly game, a victim of the syndicate's machinations. He couldn't let her suffer the same fate as his team. "The syndicate is responsible for everything that happened to me," Deckard said, his voice filled with bitterness. "They destroyed my life. Now, I'm going to help you destroy theirs." Anya was stunned by his story. She had known that Deckard was a dangerous man, but she hadn't realized the depth of his pain, the extent of his connection to the syndicate. She understood now why he was so determined to protect her, why he was willing to risk everything to expose the truth that IT wasn't just about her. It was about him, about his past, about his redemption. Knowing they couldn't fight the syndicate alone, Anya and Deckard decided to seek help. They needed allies, people they could trust, people who had the skills and the resources to take on a powerful organization like the syndicate. Anya reached out to her network of underground hackers, the digital renegades who operated in the shadows of the internet. She contacted old friends, former collaborators, and anonymous contacts, seeking information, assistance, and safe passage. Deckard, in turn, contacted former intelligence operatives, men and women who had walked away from the world of espionage but still possessed valuable skills and connections. He reached out to old comrades, former mentors, and even a few old enemies, seeking their help in his fight against the syndicate. Their call for help was answered, but not without complications. The world of espionage was a treacherous one, filled with double agents, betrayals, and shifting alliances. Trust was a rare commodity, and loyalty was often bought and sold. One of Anya's contacts, a brilliant hacker named Kai, offered to help her decrypt the remaining files and expose the syndicate's secrets to the world. But Kai was also working for the syndicate, feeding them information about Anya's whereabouts and activities. He was a double agent, playing both sides of the game. One of Deckard's former colleagues, a seasoned intelligence operative named Sarah, offered to provide them with safe passage and access to a secure communication network. But Sarah was also working for the government, determined to capture Anya and bury the truth about the syndicate. She was a hunter, disguised as an ally. Anya and Deckard found themselves caught in a web of deceit, surrounded by enemies masquerading as friends. They had to be careful, to trust their instincts, and to rely on each other. They learned to read between the lines, to decipher hidden messages, and to anticipate betrayals. Despite the dangers, they managed to gather a small team of loyal allies, people who believed in their cause and were willing to risk their lives to help them. They were a ragtag group of hackers, spies, and mercenaries, united by a common enemy and a shared desire for justice. Together, they planned their next move, their next strike against the syndicate. They knew that they were outnumbered and outgunned, but they also knew that they had the element of surprise. They were the underdogs, the rebels, the ones who dared to challenge the powerful, and they were ready to fight. The syndicate's headquarters were located in a heavily fortified skyscraper in the heart of the city, a symbol of their power and influence. IT was a fortress, protected by layers of security, armed guards, and advanced technology. Infiltrating it would be a suicide mission, but Deckard and his team had no other choice. They used a combination of stealth, deception, and brute force to bypass the security measures and gain access to the building. Anya used her hacking skills to disable cameras, unlock doors, and create diversions. Deckard and his team used their combat skills to eliminate guards, disable alarms, and clear a path to Leo's location. The skyscraper was a maze of corridors, offices, and server rooms. They moved through the building like ghosts, their movements silent and deadly. They encountered resistance at every turn, but they fought their way through, their determination fueled by their desire to rescue Leo and expose the syndicate. Finally, they reached Leo's cell. He was battered and bruised, but he was alive. Deckard quickly unlocked the cell and freed him. "We gotta get out of here," Deckard said, his voice urgent. "They know we're here." As they made their way back through the skyscraper, they were confronted by a large force of syndicate soldiers, led by a ruthless commander named Vargas. Vargas was a formidable opponent, a skilled fighter, and a loyal servant of the syndicate. He was determined to stop them from escaping. That a fierce firefight erupted, the sounds of gunfire echoing through the skyscraper. Deckard and his team fought bravely, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. They were taking heavy casualties, and they were running out of ammunition. Just when it seemed like all hope was lost, Anya stepped forward. She had been working on her laptop, hacking into the syndicate's security system. She had found a way to disable the building's power grid, plunging the skyscraper into darkness. "Now's our chance," Anya yelled. "Let's go." Deckard and his team used the darkness to their advantage, disappearing into the shadows, evading their pursuers, and making their way towards the roof of the skyscraper. They knew that their only chance of escape was to jump to a neighboring building, a daring leap of faith that could cost them their lives. The rooftop was a windswept expanse of concrete and steel, the city lights stretching out beneath them like a glittering ocean. The neighboring building was only a few meters away, but the gap seemed insurmountable. It was a leap of faith, a desperate gamble that could cost them everything. Deckard took charge, his voice calm and authoritative amidst the chaos. He assessed the situation, calculated the distance, and formulated a plan. He knew that they couldn't all make the jump. They were too weak, too injured, and too weighed down by their gear. "Anya, Leo, you're going first," Deckard said. "I'll cover you." Anya hesitated. "But Deckard—" "No arguments," Deckard interrupted. "Just do it." He secured a rope to a nearby antenna and created a makeshift zip line. He instructed Anya and Leo to grab onto the rope and swing across the jeep. It was a risky maneuver, but it was their only chance. Anya went first, her heart pounding in her chest. She grabbed the rope, took a deep breath, and launched herself into the air. She swung across the gap, her body suspended high above the city, the wind whipping through her hair. She landed safely on the other side, her legs wobbling beneath her. Leo followed, his movements clumsy and awkward. He stumbled as he landed, but Anya helped him to his feet. They were safe, for now. Deckard turned to face the remaining members of his team. "All right, let's go," he said, "one at a time." He helped each member of his team to cross the gap, providing cover fire as they made their way across. He was a one-man army, holding off the syndicate soldiers, protecting his allies, and ensuring their escape. Finally, it was his turn. He took a deep breath, grabbed the rope, and launched himself into the air. He swung across the gap, his body a blur of motion, the wind screaming in his ears. But as he reached the other side, Vargas appeared, blocking his path. Vargas was waiting for him, his eyes filled with hatred and revenge. He raised his weapon, ready to fire. Deckard knew that he was out of time. He had to make a choice, a sacrifice that could cost him his life. He had to protect Anya, to ensure that the truth about the syndicate was revealed. He had to finish what he had started. He released the rope, his body falling towards the ground. He was going to take Vargas with him. Anya watched in horror as Deckard fell, his sacrifice buying her and the team a chance to escape. Grief and rage warred within her, but she knew she couldn't succumb to despair. Deckard had given his life to protect her, to ensure that the truth was revealed. She had to honor his sacrifice. She and Leo, along with the remaining members of their team, found refuge in a hidden safe house, a forgotten corner of the city where they could regroup and plan their next move. Anya threw herself into her work, determined to decrypt the remaining files and expose the syndicate's secrets to the world. As she delved deeper into the data, she began to realize that the truth was far more complex, far more disturbing than she had ever imagined. The conspiracy wasn't just about money or power. It was about control, about manipulating global events to serve a hidden agenda. She discovered that the syndicate wasn't just a shadowy organization operating outside the law. It was a network of powerful individuals within the government, the military, and the corporate world. They were the ones who were supposed to be protecting the people, but they were the ones who were exploiting them. But the most shocking revelation was yet to come. Anya discovered that the truth the file was meant to expose wasn't what she initially thought. It wasn't just about exposing the syndicate's crimes. It was about exposing a deeper layer of corruption, a secret that could shatter the foundations of society. The files revealed that the syndicate was merely a tool, a pawn in a much larger game. They were being manipulated by an even more powerful force, an organization that had been operating in the shadows for centuries, pulling the strings of global events. This organization, known only as the Architects, believed that humanity was incapable of governing itself. They believed that the world needed to be guided, controlled, and manipulated to prevent chaos and destruction. They saw themselves as benevolent dictators, the guardians of humanity, the ones who knew what was best for everyone. Anya realized that she had stumbled upon a conspiracy that went far beyond the syndicate, a conspiracy that threatened the very foundations of freedom and democracy. She had to expose the architects, to reveal their machinations to the world. But she knew that it would be a dangerous and difficult task. They were powerful, ruthless, and determined to maintain their control. But Anya was undeterred. She had lost Deckard, she had risked her life, and she had uncovered a truth that could change the world forever. She wasn't going to back down now. She was going to fight for freedom, for justice, and for the future of humanity. Anya knew that exposing the architects would require more than just revealing their existence. She needed to prove their guilt, to provide irrefutable evidence of their crimes. She needed to find the leader of the syndicate, the one person who could connect the architects to their nefarious activities. She used her hacking skills to track down the leader of the syndicate, a ruthless businessman named Alistair Thorne. Thorne was a master manipulator, a puppet master who controlled the syndicate from behind the scenes. He was a cold, calculating, and utterly devoid of empathy. Anya and her team infiltrated Thorne's private estate, a heavily guarded fortress nestled in the mountains. They used stealth, deception, and their combined skills to bypass the security measures and gain access to Thorne's inner sanctum. They found Thorne in his study, surrounded by screens, displaying global events. He was expecting them. "I've been expecting you, Miss Petrova," Thorne said, his voice calm and composed. "I knew it was only a matter of time before you came looking for me." "You're going to pay for what you've done," Anya said, her voice filled with anger. "You're going to pay for Deckard's death." Thorne chuckled. "Deckard was a fool," he said. "He was a pawn in a game he didn't understand. That he served his purpose. And then he was discarded." Anya was enraged by his words. She lunged at Thorne, but he was too quick for her. He dodged her attack and grabbed a weapon from his desk. "I'm afraid I can't let you expose the architects," Thorne said. "They have plans for this world, plans that are far greater than anything you can imagine." He revealed that the syndicate's motive for suppressing the file wasn't just about protecting their own interests. It was about protecting the architects' vision for the future. The architects believed that they were creating a better world, a world where humanity was guided and controlled. Thorne also revealed his connection to Deckard's past. He was the one who had betrayed Deckard's team, the one who had led them into the ambush. That he had done it because Deckard had gotten too close to the truth, too close to exposing the architects. Anya was horrified by his revelations. She realized that she was facing an enemy who was not only powerful but also deeply entrenched in the fabric of society. She knew that she had to stop him. No matter the cost, a fierce battle ensued, Anya and her team fighting against Thorne and his bodyguards. The study was transformed into a war zone, the sounds of gunfire and explosions echoing through the mountains. Amidst the chaos of the battle, Anya managed to reach her laptop. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, her hacking skills honed to a razor's edge. She had to expose the syndicate's crimes, to reveal the architect's machinations, to unleash the truth upon the world. She bypassed Thorne's security systems, disabled his firewalls, and accessed the global communication network. She uploaded the decrypted files, the incriminating documents, the damning evidence of the syndicate's crimes. She triggered the dead man's switch. A wave of data surged across the internet, flooding news outlets, social media platforms, and government servers. The truth was out there, impossible to ignore, impossible to suppress. The architects' secrets were revealed, their plans exposed, their power threatened. The world watched in disbelief as the evidence of their manipulations was laid bare, their lies unraveling before their very eyes. Governments crumbled, alliances shattered, and chaos erupted across the globe. The architects' carefully constructed world order was collapsing, their dream of a controlled and guided humanity turning into a nightmare. Thorne watched in horror as his world crumbled around him. He had failed. He had allowed Anya to expose the architects, to unleash the truth upon the world. "You haven't won, Ms. Petrova," Thorne said, his voice filled with desperation. "You've only unleashed chaos. The architects will rebuild, they will regain control, and they will silence you forever." Anya smiled. "Maybe," she said, "but at least the world will know the truth. And that's all that matters." With the files released, Anya had done what she set out to do. But Thorn was still a threat. Anya engaged Thorn in hand-to-hand combat. She used everything Deckard had taught her, every skill she had learned, every ounce of her strength and determination. The fight was brutal and unforgiving, a clash of wills between two powerful forces. Anya was outmatched in terms of physical strength and combat experience, but she was fueled by her rage, her grief, and her unwavering belief in the truth. Finally, after a grueling struggle, Anya managed to gain the upper hand. She disarmed Thorn, pinned him to the ground, and looked him in the eyes. "This is for Deckard," she said. She delivered a final, decisive blow, ending Thorn's reign of terror and avenging Deckard's death. Asterisk. This key point seems to be redundant, given that key point 15 already describes Anya defeating Thorn in a brutal hand-to-hand fight. It also incorrectly assumes Deckard is still alive. Asterisk. Instead, I will reinterpret the key point to focus on Anya's internal conflict, and how she makes a difficult moral choice regarding how she releases the information. The world was reeling from Anya's revelations, governments toppling and alliances dissolving in the face of the exposed truths. But as the dust settled, Anya faced a new moral dilemma. The dead man's switch had unleashed a torrent of information, some of which was deeply personal and potentially damaging to innocent individuals. While much of it exposed the corruption of the architects and their pawns, some files contained information that could ruin lives, even if unintentionally. Anya wrestled with the decision of what to do. Her initial goal was to expose the conspiracy, to bring down the powerful who had been manipulating the world from the shadows. But had she gone too far? Had she unleashed a weapon that was too indiscriminate, too dangerous? Leo, ever the pragmatist, argued that all the information had to be released. The world needed to know the full extent of the corruption, no matter the cost. The ends justified the means. But Anya couldn't shake the feeling that she had a responsibility to protect the innocent, to minimize the collateral damage. Deckard, she remembered, had always strived to do what was right, even when it was difficult. Anya spent days poring over the remaining files, agonizing over which information to release and which to suppress. It was a difficult and agonizing process, forcing her to confront her own moral ambiguity. She was a hacker, a truth seeker, but she was also a human being, with a conscience and a sense of responsibility. Finally, she made her decision. She released the files that exposed the architect's crimes and manipulations, but she suppressed the files that contained personal information or could potentially harm innocent individuals. It was a compromise, a difficult balance between her desire to expose the truth and her responsibility to protect the innocent. She knew that she would likely face criticism for her decision. Some would accuse her of censorship, of withholding information that the world had a right to know. But she stood by her decision, believing that it was the right thing to do. She had exposed the conspiracy, avenged Deckard's death, and helped to create a more just and equitable world. But she had also learned a valuable lesson about the power of information and the importance of using it responsibly. The world was forever changed. Asterisk. This key point also incorrectly assumes Deckard is alive, and is somewhat vague. Asterisk. I will reinterpret this to focus on Anya's future, and how she decides to use her skills moving forward. The world was forever changed, but for Anya, the fight was far from over. The architects were still out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for an opportunity to regain their power. She knew that they would never give up, that they would continue to manipulate and control the world from behind the scenes. She couldn't stay in one place. She couldn't risk putting her friends and allies in danger. She had to disappear, to become a ghost, to continue her fight against the architects from the shadows. She entrusted Leo and the remaining members of her team with the task of monitoring the exposed information, of ensuring that the world never forgot the truth about the syndicate and the architects. She knew that they would be vigilant, that they would continue to fight for freedom and justice. Anya, now a symbol of rebellion and truth, vanished from the public eye, leaving behind her old life, her old identity, and her old ways. She shed her fashion-forward persona, adopting a more practical and anonymous style. She traded her penthouse apartment for a nomadic existence, traveling the world, using her hacking skills to disrupt the architects' operations, to expose their lies, and to protect the innocent. She became a digital vigilante, a shadow warrior fighting for a better world. She sought out other hackers, other truth seekers, other rebels, building a network of allies who shared her vision. She knew that the fight would be long and difficult, that she would face many challenges and many dangers. But she was determined to continue, to honor Deckard's sacrifice, and to ensure that the truth prevailed. The world had been awakened, and Anya was committed to keeping it awake. The architects may have controlled the world for centuries, but now they had an enemy who knew their secrets, who understood their methods, and who was willing to fight them to the very end. The final scene shows Anya, silhouetted against a computer screen, her fingers flying across the keyboard. She is hacking into a secure server, disrupting the architect's latest operation. Her eyes are focused, her expression determined. The fight continues. The adventure continues.